Bienvenidos. Welcome to the Bob Tuskin Show. It's June 16th, 2011. And boy, do we have a show for you today. I just got back from my city commission meeting. Every other Thursday, the city commission allows for public comments, allowing for me to speak for 3 minutes in my free speech zone to the elected officials, otherwise known as public servants, who swear an oath to the Constitution. I'll talk about that and so much more that has been going on with me behind the scenes. It's always fun when I have an open format kind of show to share with you all the progress I've been making as an activist. As you know, I'm not just a talk show host. I'm an activist first and foremost. And speaking of activists, for the full program tonight, I have a good friend of mine and fellow activist. You know him very well. It's Popeye from FederalJack.com. He and I were up late last night. Hey, Popeye, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Good, man. I hear the Desperate Housewives in the background still. I know your wife is diligently watching all the most informative of television programming.
She's switching between that and the news.
Yeah, a little bit of an inside joke, but we'll tell you why we were up so late last night. Many of you by now are aware of the story that took place in Vancouver after a hockey game, not a G20 summit, not a Federal Reserve crisis, a hockey game. We'll tell you about our coverage of that late last night. And also with us, a very special treat, especially in this capacity. Usually we're used to having him give his presentation on the variety of different occult topics he covers and researches. And of course, he has a show on Oracle Broadcasting Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time with his in-depth research on the powers that shouldn't be. It's our good friend Mark Passio with WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com. Mark, great to have you here.
Bob, always a pleasure to be here.
We're going to get into some things tonight that go outside of the box of our normal topics, but if anyone has any questions for Mark about any of the occult symbolism, whether it's to touch on some of the stuff we've talked about in the last 2 shows we did with Mark on the police and military mockery by the occult, feel free to join us. Nothing's off the table for tonight's show. We'll go from fluoride to feeding the homeless to these Canadian riots to 9/11 with the FBI acknowledging Richard Gage's presentation, which is a huge story, and if you haven't read it yet, it's at the website, bobtuskin.com. That's Tuskin. So we're going to go all over the place, and we'll take your phone calls as well for this round table of sorts. We have myself, Popeye, Mark Passio, and you, the listener. Dial us toll-free, 866-841-1065. Love to hear from our audience. So get out your crayon, write this down, and don't be shy. Feel free to join us. We don't bite. 866-841-1065. You got that? All right, cool. All right, folks, we'll get into all of those various topics I mentioned and so much more in just a moment. It's a short segment at the top of the hour, and then we'll have a nice long segment in just a moment after these commercial breaks. After these commercial breaks? No, that's not what I wanted to say. After this commercial break. There we go. And, of course, the Bob Tuskin Show tonight is brought to you by BitcoinExchange.cc. Check out Bitcoins. If you're not familiar with the whole Bitcoin thing, I've been posting articles. Max Kaiser's been talking a lot about it. Anyway, sponsor BitcoinExchange.cc, and it's linked up to the website. So I was telling you about our new sponsor, BitcoinExchange.cc. And as I was talking about that, I remembered that there was a story that came out today from PC World. The headline reads, World's First Virtual Heist. Bitcoin user loses $500,000. It's not several trillion like the Wanta case and other cases, but $500,000. What the heck happened? I'll go over that story in a little bit, but let's talk with Mark for a moment about this crazy story of people being arrested, we've been reporting this for the last week or so, for giving food to the homeless. I spoke in front of my city commission today, and that's one of the things I mentioned. Orlando, Florida is about 2 hours south of where I live. And in Orlando, they're arresting people for not terrorism, for not, drugs, which is ridiculous in its own right. They're arresting people for feeding the hungry. And here in Gainesville, they've put in a meal limit so that at the local shelter where they give meals to the homeless, there's only 130 meals allowed to be fed to the homeless. What happens when you're that 131st person, that child? Because some legislation, some bureaucracy, not natural law, okay, but some bureaucracy, which is something we talk with Mark a lot about, the difference between natural law and these man-made bureaucratic systems. The fact of the matter is, this is outrageous. This is police state totalitarian oppression like you wouldn't believe. Mark, your thoughts on this story?
Well, Bob, I did see the images and the video of this disgusting turn of events, and it just sickens me to the core because these people are doing something that is completely within their natural rights to do. And
right.
This needs to be stressed and emphasized. They are doing nothing that is wrong. So under natural law, they are harming no other living being. They're actually attempting to help to alleviate the suffering of other living beings, which is what we all should be doing.
Right, exactly.
And
these people should get medals, not be put in handcuffs.
Exactly. And the nerve, the unmitigated gall of these thugs, just let's be straight and call them exactly what they are. These aren't protectors of the peace or the people. These are corporate thugs.
In fancy costumes.
Thinking that they have the right, no matter who told them that they have the right to go and do this, to people who are trying to help alleviate others' suffering, to go and put them in handcuffs and drag them away. Now, see, part of the problem is that these people have grown up into adulthood. You know, they haven't mentally grown up. They haven't emotionally grown up. They haven't spiritually grown up. They've physically reached adulthood. Let's put it that way. And they know absolutely zero about what a right actually is and what a right is not. They do not know the difference between that which is right to do, an action which is right to take, meaning I have the right to do it, therefore it is my right, because I am not wronging another by doing it. They don't know the difference between that and a wrong, which is what they are perpetrating onto these people who are attempting to live in a way that is harmonious with natural law and in a way with core values, real values, not the valuing of a paycheck, which is what these corporate thugs, the only thing they value in life. Okay?
Mark, they're just doing their job.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even believe anyone would accept that as an excuse. But moreover, I can't believe people would stand back and do nothing to stop this from taking place.
Right.
I think these people should have been stopped from taking anyone away from that scene by whatever means needed to do it.
Yeah,
honestly.
Watching the footage makes me feel like, it makes me real antsy wanting to, say, hey, what are you guys doing? Why are you, and I know
they should have been arrested. They should have been arrested by the people, meaning stopped. That's the definition of the word arrest. Look it up in any decent dictionary. Arrest means to stop. Okay, it comes from the French language, arrête. Okay, it means to stop, to put a stop to an action that is taking place. And that's what should have been done to these so-called police.
Or cops. Because as we've talked about on our program about the police and military cult mockery, they're just copies. They're just cops, taking their orders from the powers that should be.
It's a disgrace that anybody could reach a state of adulthood and still be in that much ignorance about right from wrong. It's unfathomable. I mean, I'm dumbfounded by it. And that it's the year 2011 and we still have people of this low level of mental, emotional, and spiritual development. And they're in a position of power and responsibility. It's laughable.
Scary. And they're all adrenaline junkies. So it's almost like they're addicted to that confrontation.
That's all they're really living for, because once they get a taste of that, it is literally like a drug. And then the body starts to crave it. And what it does to the brain is worse than anything that any hard drug on the street does to the human brain. And I'm telling you, research this. Look up what chronic adrenaline in the human system will do to the neocortex of the brain.
Put holes in it, no?
This is basic neuroscience. It is one of the most dangerous things that you could have pumping into through the blood-brain barrier, because this substance will break down connections, synaptic connections in the neocortex, and that is the higher thought function center of the brain. It is the reasoning center of the brain. It is the part of the brain that helps us to experience compassion and emotion and intuition, and it is the rational faculties of the human being. The decision-making processes come from that area of the brain. And if you're in constant fight or flight mode, and if your body is constantly pumping out adrenaline, this part of the brain becomes continuously damaged, and over time it becomes worse than the worst drug-addicted person, addicted to heroin hopelessly.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff, Mark. It's very scary, and adrenaline is a drug. It's funny that they're fighting people who are smoking marijuana, perhaps, which is something that helps in many respects, when they're addicted to a very dangerous drug themselves, creating all sorts of havoc. All right, folks, 866-841-1065, the number to join us. When we get back, we'll talk with Popeye about the madness last night that we were covering until 3 in the morning with the Vancouver riots. And we'll also respond to someone in the chat who seems to think that the word cops comes from something else other than coffee. I'll have Mark explain that.